Good morning. This morning I'm joined by Gustav Rohde. He's the CEO of Zutari, used to be Aurecon, and they're the biggest building and infrastructure consultants in Africa.
Hi, Tinas. Good morning.
Could you give me a brief overview of how you got into engineering?
I come from a family which is all engineers. My dad's an engineer, my sister's an engineer, my other brother's an engineer, etc. So it's deeply rooted, and actually my great-grandfather was an engineer as well. Well, some call that a handicap, but the reality of it is it's deeply rooted in me. But I'm probably also not your typical engineer because I've had a great journey of being an entrepreneur, being a businessman, etc. So you should not ask me too many engineering questions at the moment. But when I got my degree at Stellenbosch, and this is now a long time ago, it was very much about understanding and being deeply rooted in engineering. But if you look at the definition of engineering, it says to bring solutions to society based on deep engineering skills or scientific skills. I think we're in an age where the second thing is becoming more important than the first. You can't be a good engineer without deep science and technical knowledge. But what's happening is that a lot of the things that in the past we had to do ourselves is now in tools and apps. So the life of an engineer has changed. For us, it's now about solving complex problems, linking with clients, linking with society, etc. We can only do it with deeper skills, but the reality of the future is a lot of those things are going to be captured in apps, in artificial intelligence and other things that the fourth industrial revolution has brought to us. And that holds true for the world of electronic and electrical engineering as well. Is probably you have to understand the deep technical stuff, but it's going to be the challenge of the future is going to be much more in the things that computers can't do. Being the interface to society, solving the complex problems, etc.
What do you think are the main challenges in Africa with regards to engineering?
I think in some way one can say, well, some of these things are not relevant to us. I think it's absolutely relevant because we might have the advantage of skipping a generation of development. Some of the solutions that's being brought to market. A good example might be in Africa, lots of countries don't have telephone lines. So people got onto mobile devices much quicker because that was the only way to get there instead of some parts of the world like South Africa, which has got lots of investment in fixed line infrastructure. The same might hold true for electrical stuff, where at the end of the day, Africa, one of the shortcomings is the distribution network. So the fact that nowadays one can put up solar plants and you can have hydro, etc., and not have to depend on big transmission facilities might just fast-track it. So I think one should not say that Africa is lagging the world. We might be in a position where some of these modern technologies can actually be implemented much quicker because we don't have the historic investments to maintain either.
Where do you see the biggest growth in the job market for engineers right now?
Well, in our practice, which is combinations of civil, mechanical, and electrical, our biggest growth market at the moment is we call it the energy sector, and the energy sector with renewables. So it is all about solar implementations, wind, and hydro. And it's been driven, especially on the African continent, because of the world's understanding of sustainability. America's coming back to the Paris Accord. We're seeing Europe absolutely obsessed with this. And Tinas, you know that, the horizon for non-electrical vehicles in the rest of the world, they don't want to build them anymore. We probably they're going to be around in Africa for a while, but the reality is the future is all about clean energy. So I think for your students, the days of looking after coal power plants and stuff, that's gone. The reality is they have a clean future, and Africa is the same. Even in South Africa, the coal horizons for coal, we're hugely dependent on coal, but it's finite. because the reality is you can sit in North America or in Europe and want a clean world, but the reality, if you don't force the developing world also to follow suit, it won't happen. So I think it's going to be, on the one side, it's going to be the renewables are becoming cheaper. So it's an economic thing that will happen. The rest of it is also going to be through legislation and maybe also global drives.
The one thing that's becoming very apparent in these interviews is that many people, when they enter the job market, they experience something completely different to what they were expecting. So I think I want to frame it in the following way to you. What advice would you have to students who plan to enter the job market in the construction industry or the consulting industry in infrastructure? What advice would you have for them right now?
I've got probably lots of advice to them. The first one is around the world of changes due to the digital revolution that we're facing. I'm delighted with the progress that's made at Stellenbosch to make sure that our students are all ready in terms of coding and understanding how to work with data, etc. Because I think any student that leaves university now without understanding and being able to code and understand what the Internet of Things and digital allows for us, they're ill-equipped for the future. The second one is probably more general, which is timeless, is I would advise the students not to already plan their whole journey at the future. To say, what do you want to do in 4 years, 5 years, and 10 years from now? Because the world has changed so fast that we don't even know what careers will be around in 10 years from now. Yeah. So to me, is don't plan too fast, but I think it's about equipping yourself with technology of the day. It's about agility, and I think it's about really being able to solve problems. An interesting fact is, and can't mention the name, but if you look at one of the big management consultants in Australia last year, one would imagine that the biggest employment would be chartered accountants or BCom degrees. The biggest number of employees that they employed were engineers. And the reason and the logic is they can solve problems. They're solution driven. They're digitally sound. They can do coding. So for your students, I think they're studying the right thing, but don't think you're going to be an electrical engineer. You might be, but the reality of the future is going to be it's more problem solving, more integration, more multidisciplinary than the days I grew up in.
It's interesting that you say that. Obviously I had to scour my contacts to decide who to interview for these interviews, and I was fascinated to see that more than half the people who work in my field are not electrical and electronic engineers. They're chemical engineers or mechanical engineers who've just transcended the boundaries. And I think that's an important message that you're conveying there. You should learn the skills, learn what you can, but in the end, it's about the way of thinking and being agile and being able to adapt. And I think those are extremely important skills, especially given the fourth industrial revolution and with robots taking jobs and changing the work environment completely.
You said that robots are taking our jobs. They can only take some of our jobs. They can take the jobs that's repeatable, because anything that's repeatable and a machine can learn. So I think if we, as engineers, we have the opportunity to focus on the non-repeatable things and the things that computers can't do. We've got to understand what they do and implement what the apps do for us. But I see a rosy future for engineering students.
Fantastic. That is very useful. Gustav, thank you very much for your time. All the best with this role of CEO in Zutari, and we hope to speak to you soon again. And thank you also for your contribution to our faculty. Thank you.
100%. Love it.